Hey everybody, my name is Chase Pipes and you're watching Chasing History. We're at the historic Thomas and Helen Peed house in literally downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, and we're doing some excavations in the back. This home was built in 1889 and it has a rich history. Everything from gunfights to Mark Twain, even a misspelled tombstone. But what we're looking to find is what archaeological evidence is left here at the house that has still yet to be seen, that can still be discovered. So what we're doing is we are digging the cistern. If you've never heard of a cistern, what a cistern is basically all of the rainwater. This is before indoor plumbing. What they would do is they would dig a big hole in the backyard, and all of the rainwater would go into this catch basin. This was before indoor plumbing. This was your water for bathing, washing, drinking, kitchen, anything you needed water for. This is where you got your water. What would happen is that once plumbing came along, they no longer needed this big giant hole full of water anymore, so they would fill it in, and they would fill it in with all kinds of stuff, including bottles, garbage, coal, trash, whatever they had to get rid of, they filled this hole up. We've already gotten started on the hole right now, and we're going to show you this entire process of how you can dig a big giant hole like this and find some really epic history. We're here with our friends again. We're here with Mike Barbera. We're here with Steve and Daniel, and we are digging this history and seeing what we can find. So if you want to see this whole process, you're going to want to hang out and check out this episode. So what the guys are doing behind us, as you can see, so they're using these rods called probe rods, and they're trying to find the exact location of the cistern itself. Sometimes you have maps where you can look on a map on a Sanborn fire insurance map, and it'll kind of tell you exactly where all of the outer buildings are. But some places, those maps didn't record things like where the cistern was. So these guys are probing around with these probe rods looking for the cistern. So how is it that this rod can tell you where that hole is?
The earth never packs down solid once it's been dug.
Okay.
So with a cistern, mostly everything in there's trash, not really dirt, like an outhouse would be. So if we can get 4 foot down in the ground, once it breaks through a cap or whatever, that probe has a small bead on the end of it, and it'll go right down to the handle. Then we go behind almost everywhere. If it's soft ground, you can get about a 4 foot probe in, but can't get 6 foot in.
Okay.
So then we go in behind it with the 6 foot probe, and the 6 foot probe will tell us exactly if there's really something there. You know what I mean?
So basically what you've got is you've got the land over here. So basically what you've got is you've got the land over here is solid ground. It's never been dug before. So it's really compact ground. But where this hole was already dug, the ground is a little softer, so it's easier for a steel rod to get through the ground.
And he's just gone in with a 4 foot rod right here. We've been poking it out. So if I can get a 6 foot rod.
Are you hitting the wall, maybe?
I'm into something. It just stuck, filled like a tree would. Try to know the hole, Mike. And they're usually filled with debris. So there's bricks and mud and mortar and all kinds of stuff in it.
Try that
I
one.
think that one.
And see, just like that, that's what we want. That's exactly what we want, where it just keeps pushing on straight down through. So you think we got a spot to dig?
I think we do, because even if we got a tree root here, but if it was a tree stump, we still would only be able to get down 2 or 3 foot, because the roots would compact the soil.
You hit that red clay, and then usually,
right, that clay stops it.
but this keeps going down and keeps going down.
So it's worth opening up and we got to get down there a few feet and keep probing. We get down 2 feet, and we probe another 6 foot down, and then get another 3 foot, and then it's got to be something. Nothing packs like that except a well or whatever. And at the same time, a house that is so affluent like this house might have had somebody come and instead of trashing it, filled it in with their ash and, just kept filling it properly.
Right.
But
Open.
we're hoping they were real trashy.
Now we know what we're gonna dig. Okay, let's go get some shovels and get at it, and we're gonna show you what it looks like to open up a cistern.
That's a good sign. When you start getting those bricks.
So Mike, this is a really good sign. This is what we're hoping to see.
Correct. Usually a cistern originally stood this high off the ground, and it was like a dome of bricks, and the bricks extended to the ground.
Okay.
But as they didn't need the cistern anymore and they had a big hole, they would take all the bricks that stood above the ground and push them into
Just
the hole.
knock them in.
So that's why you usually find a lot of bricks inside the cisterns.
So this is a good sign that we're on the right path. So let's keep digging and see what else we got. All right, so Mike, we've got some more bricks going down, so I guess that's the good sign that we want to keep looking for. But tell us about the dirt, because this looks like a lot of ashy, a lot of trashy dirt. Is this what we're looking for?
If we were just digging a hole in the yard, we'd go down maybe 6 inches, 8 inches, maybe a foot, and start hitting red clay. This is definitely something because we're still going down and it's still dark dirt.
Okay.
So they filled it in with ash, dirt, good dirt, debris, coal.
So, I mean, they'd have thrown sticks in there. They'd have thrown ash out of their fireplace in there. And if you look down into the dirt and you see this black consistency, that's good, really good, high-quality dirt that's got a lot of biomass in it. So a lot of trees, a lot of ash, a lot of things. Geologically, if we were to go down a foot and hit this red clay that's right behind you. So we're not hitting that, which means that we are in a hole, we're in a column that's filled with really good dirt. So it's another great sign that we're on the right track.
Sometimes they had a cistern and they would put the pit, instead of digging another hole for the pit, they would just put the outhouse over the cistern.
Oh, no way.
And you already had a ready-made outhouse hole.
Oh, that's
You know?
genius. They
Yeah.
just fill it up and don't have to pay the
That's
guys
right.
for being dipped. So,
And they're a lot deeper. They're like 15 to 18 feet deep.
so
yeah.
that's a column of poo.
Correct.
That's
a lot,
right.
A lot of that came from, like Philadelphia, the larger cities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they were really confined and tight spaced, and there was nowhere to haul anything away or get anybody in. Man, if you had that, it was gold. Just let's go ahead and keep going. And then the layers start really early with those cisterns.
Yeah.
1840, 1850 with their cisterns.
Yeah.
Because they were big cities, and so you got better stuff, higher quality, more expensive, early.
There it is.
Stuff. Okay.
That's the cistern.
Yeah.
See the wall?
That's it. Oh, nice. See that right there?
Yeah.
So that's the wall that we're looking for. So what this is, pull that brick out.
Yeah,
So
we'll probably
you've
need
got
some.
You've got a wall that's curving, that's going down inside, and it'll curve and go straight down. So that means, oh man, that's
That's right.
awesome.
It's going to be like a silo in the ground, a farm silo that's made of bricks. And it's going to be about 8 feet around, 6 to 8 feet around, and probably go down 14 to 18 feet.
And what we're hoping is that it's going to be filled with bottles and all kinds of cool trash that they threw out. So we don't know until we get down there and dig. So you're definitely going to hang out and watch this episode and see what all we find. Mike, awesome. Thank you,
Right.
dude. Yeah.
And in this neighborhood, this was the upper class neighborhood. This is where the lawyers, the doctors, the pharmacists lived. This house was an architect. Everybody had money. So the bottles should be better bottles.
Yeah.
They should be good stuff.
You know,
So
that's
I hope-
another interesting thing to look at when you're looking at finding a site that you want to dig is, you know, how affluent was that neighborhood? How much money did they have? Because, you know, they're not buying the cheap discounted stuff,
Right.
you know, that doesn't have embossing on the bottle. They're paying the extra money to have the nicer stuff, you know, a better product, which is going to have embossing on the bottle, which means a greater value for what we're finding.
And also, here's another thing. There was a pharmacist called Spence Drug Stores.
Okay.
They were down here on the corner of, let's see, what's the name of that? I can't think of the name of the street. It's one street over and 2 blocks down, okay? And they bottled their druggist stuff in green bottles embossed. That's what we're looking for.
Cool.
This is the neighborhood where you dig those.
So what's fascinating is that in every city, in every state across the entire country, you are going to get all these different little local drugstores made their own bottles. Okay, some would have their own labels. Some companies would have bottles that had their name embossed on it, where they would have them manufactured and brought in. Depending on the rarity of that specific drugstore, depends on the value of the bottle. So the rarer the drugstore, like this one down here, the more valuable the bottle. So the fact is that when we get down here, we could find some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, they bottled in emerald green bottles.
That's
six
so
different
cool.
sizes.
I've never seen one.
I've had the whole set, but right now I've only got 2 or 3 of them.
That's
But
cool.
They are cool, and that's what we're hoping to find is some of those too.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get in and
We just
figure
need
it out.
to open this sucker up now.
So right now what
Let
we're
me
trying
get
to
in
do
here.
is we're trying to dig around and expose the entirety of the cistern. So we don't want to just dig one hole and then go down in. That's not very efficient. So what we're wanting
Right
to
on
do
the edge of it.
is to actually
edge is right
undo
there.
what was done 100 years ago. So 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, they completely
Here's the
filled
circle of
this
it.
in.
So it
what
probably
we wanna do
goes
is
like
we
this.
want to completely expose it so that way we can
But we'll just
find
have to open it up.
everything that can be found down in that cistern. So we're opening it up. We're going to make a big giant hole here to expose the entirety of the cistern. So at the end of the episode, it'll be really cool because you'll get to see what a cistern looked like from the late 1880s, 1890s. So we'll be able to see that. But if you can look, see how it continues to open up as Mike goes around. So it's going to keep going. It'll probably be 6 or 7 feet across by the time we're done. So right now it's just the grunt work of getting and digging it out. We're with Jeff Caldwell. He's one of the contractors working on the house. And Jeff, you found some really interesting things while doing construction here on this house, right?
Yes, sir.
Show us what you found.
Well, back in this area, when we took off this wall, it was an old little leather shoe.
Oh,
Lady's
that's cool.
shoe. Yeah, it was
Like
really
back
good.
behind the wall?
Well, it was actually up in here,
No
up
joke.
on top of the ceiling. I don't know how it got there, but that's where it was. And it was kind of more in this area.
Yeah.
Stuff down in there. I don't know what they used it for, but it was up in there.
Now, when you see old buildings like this, because you do a lot of work in Knoxville, right?
Yes, sir.
So a lot of these old buildings, some of this could be that old growth lumber out of the Smokies,
Yes,
couldn't it? Because
it
this
could
was
be.
18. When was this house built? 1880s,
1886, I believe.
1886.
I think so.
You know, we've got a national park not too far from us, and a lot of these homes, you know, unfortunately, the national park was logged to death before it became a national park. So when you look in some of these old homes and you see the tightness of the grain, I mean, some of this could be old growth lumber, you know, that came out of the national park, which I always think it's really cool about buildings of our area. More than likely, that's where they came because that's where the
yeah.
big lumber mill was. What other kind of things did you find in here?
Back in this back corner, I call it the little study. The back right, when we started taking this wall out
Yeah.
there of the plaster, back in that little bottom part was about $20 worth of silver quarters and dimes.
You're kidding!
Yes, it was actually $24.
No way!
Yes.
Would you remember the dates or the years?
I haven't even looked at them. I've still got them in a Ziploc bag. Probably gonna get them back to Sean so
Yeah.
that he can clean them up and part of the history of here.
Yeah.
It was stuff back in that corner,
No
and
way.
it drawed us to because there was like the plaster. Of course, it was plaster, but there was like a little opening back in there
Wow, where that was like somebody's little cubby hole.
where they had hid the money back in there.
Do you often find when you're working on buildings like this, because I'm sure you do a lot of historic homes, do you find little things like that kind of squirreled away that people have forgotten?
Oh yeah, there's been several little pieces of like costume jewelry and like
Really?
I said, a leather shoe, a
Yeah.
little bit. It had to. I mean, it looked like that little leather shoe that was a boot, silver dollars, old jewelry. There's been some old iron the iron steel, what they used to beat steel with. There was a hammerhead
Yeah.
down there in the basement. Some little wrenches that were from the early 1900s that was just in walls or laying around in the corners.
Because see, what you got to keep in mind is just like in your home today, if you may squirrel some stuff away, think that nobody will ever know it. Well, something happens to you, you forget it and leave it there. That stuff gets laid there forever until the home is literally gutted, taken down to the bare walls like what we have here, and then all of that stuff that was hidden away, that was somebody's little secret hideaway, is found and rediscovered. And unfortunately, the story's lost. I bet that dude was mad when he lost his coins.
Oh, he was.
That's a lot of money back then.
That was.
Be really curious to see the dates on the coins. Yes. If you get to look at them again, holler us. Let us know what the dates are. That'd be interesting to know, because the time period can tell a date. Was it during the Depression? Was it something that they were hiding out? So you never know. Is there anything else cool about the house you'd like to show us?
One other thing electrical is my that's my specialty, and this house has, you could see the generations over the history from the way they heated it with the steam radiators.
Yeah.
And they had the big unit down there, which is still down there. Of course, all the big radiators are gone, but I saw the beginning of the electrical when it got very first installed in here, which was years later.
When do you think when that was?
Well, it would have been probably, it had to be in the 20s or 30s.
Okay.
It was actually single strand power, okay, on glass knobs.
You're kidding.
No. And then just another single ground beside it. So it was the 2-wire system, but it was the very first. And then it was left abandoned.
Yeah.
And then they went to the knob and tube is what they called it. And then they moved on to what people know now as the asbestos fiberglass pull wire. Mm-hmm. It was left abandoned, and then they had upgraded to the flexible conduit, and it was still just 2-wire in it, which is kind of rare. So you had them first 3 generations, and now the new updated modern where we have Romex 3-wire ground system.
That is so cool.
But I was able to tear it all out
and see it all. Wow.
The very first receptacles that was invented was still in this house. There's still a couple that I've left here that have not taken out yet. And
now, are you going to leave some of those things in place, or are you going to rip it all out?
All the old wiring I had to for codes.
So you're legally not allowed to leave it. You have to pull it out.
I can leave the device in there, like over in that area. Sean has asked me to pull them out because he wants to keep them and have some stuff for part of the history of the house.
Okay.
Because like I said, it's the very first receptacle that we know of.
Right,
you know, and the very first switch that was ever put in that Edison invented. And but as far as the wire itself, I have to physically tear out, and it's already out of the house.
But see, that's something that's really cool that archaeologically speaking may not mean much now, but in another 100, 200 years, can you imagine going into a house and archaeologically speaking see the progression of electricity through an entire building's life history? And it's really awesome that the owner is going to keep that material, here with the house, so that if in 300 years this becomes a 400-year-old home, that's going to mean a lot to somebody in the future. And that's just so cool that you got to see that, man. Oh, yeah. It's like being a little detective.
It is. And I've done a few of these houses. This one has, as far as I know on the electrical side, has some of the stuff has amazed me of how they did it.
That's cool.
And seeing it. I literally saw 120, 130 years of the difference of electrical history.
That's so cool.
And it was very neat. This is one of the other items that we still have that's left here, and that is the very first toilet that was used for actual, plumbing, and it is called a buttercup.
Are you
toilet.
Serious?
Yes.
So when the outhouse was finished and they quit using the outhouse, they got indoor plumbing, and this was the very first toilet?
Very first toilet that was ever put into residential homes.
And of course it's an American standard.
It's American standard.
Look at that. Wow. This is kind of weird. I'm in an odd position.
It is very
First poo
clean.
in Knoxville.
And so what it come up, this tank actually come up, and it was a steel pipe, and then it had the tank was up mounted on the wall.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
I've seen those where sometimes the tanks are up really high and they pull this long chain, and that's
Yes.
what causes the action. Man, that is so cool. But the
is.
original porcelain
Very
goddess
first one.
is still in here. That is super cool, man. Thanks for showing that to us. When would they have put this in?
That I'm not for sure.
Okay. So probably the teens, 19 teens, because by the 19 teens, pretty much all of Knoxville had plumbing by then, and most people were tired of walking out in the cold to go to the bathroom. They started putting indoor plumbing like this, and I've never seen a toilet this old. This is cool, man.
And when Sean gets here, I'm sure he will show you there is some amazing clawfoot tubs still here.
Oh, cool, man.
And they're going to use them back in the house.
Cool, awesome,
amazing.
dude. Thank you very much. All right, so guys, Isaac's starting to get the edge exposed, and dude, this is freaking huge, man. This ain't no little cistern. I don't think I've seen one this big.
It's the biggest one. I really believe this is going to be the biggest one. Usually 8 foot is like a massive one. This is way bigger.
So
It looks like a 10-footer.
So 10 foot across, 20 feet deep.
Possibly,
is what you're thinking?
yeah.
Because look at the curvature. So we've got the curvature. Here's the angle of our curvature. So that means all the way back. It's going all the way back there. So I mean, this is going to be a huge freaking hole. But that just means that the chance of finding more stuff is even better.
Right.
So this is the biggest one you've ever seen. You've never seen a cistern this big before?
Mike, I mean,
I have. I dug the L&N cistern.
Oh,
The
whoa!
hotel was, and that thing was 20 feet across.
Holy cow!
There was 8 people at a time digging in there.
Wow!
So and we never could get to the bottom.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We dug for like 3 or 4 days, and then we were down probably about 15 feet, and there was no end in sight. But then they buried it all, and they were doing the interstate.
Oh, that's so it's under Interstate 40.
Under downtown 275.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's what's crazy is where you're driving right now, or where you're living right now, there's history like this literally right around you. I mean, look, guys, turn around. We're in a neighborhood, all right? This is somebody's neighbor. Look, neighbor. This is an old neighborhood, that was built in the 1800s. So this technology, if you're in a neighborhood from the 1800s, 100%, this exact technology is buried
Go
hidden
slow and easy.
somewhere
We've got a
right next
long
to where
time.
you're at right now, especially if you're in a city. But man, we have got
And get
a
it.
lot of digging ahead to us.
We can bucket
What's even
underneath it.
worse is where the guys are standing right now is that's a concrete cap that would have been put over this, and we don't know whether we can bust through it or not, so we might have to go underneath the concrete cap and down. So
Actually, the driveway is what it is.
is there
yeah, the
another pocket?
driveway is blocking us up.
Yeah, see, so from underneath, if you can come over this side, where the dome was on the cistern, they couldn't fill it in. They kept filling in from the top, and it kept easing out. But naturally, the top would fill up before the underneath of the edges would, and so we've got an empty pocket in there where it has settled over 100 years. Everything's settled, and it allows us a pocket. And working these pockets is where all the trash around the edges would probably most likely be.
roll.
If you walked out of the house and you threw it, so it was domed,
Gotcha.
so it would just hit the top and roll down along the sides. So
So when we get to the walls down there, that's when we should start hitting some bottles, hopefully. But we don't know how deep yet.
and that's like I said, eight foot across is a standard huge cistern. 6 foot is a small one. This size right here, I'm looking at it going like, oh my Lord, I just never imagined. I never
So
imagined.
basically, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Even downtown, even digging downtown in the city,
Yeah.
nothing like this.
Well,
Yeah.
I dug one that was like 10 or 12 foot one time. Right, and again, it was right behind the lighting building
So why would a family have such a big cistern?
because they had a big family and they had money.
Okay.
And once
So-
again,
Money, they could have the biggest cistern they want.
So would people run out? I mean, would cisterns run out during the summer? Or
they all
winter?
pumped in from the guttering on the
Right,
house.
right.
So it generally we don't get enough of a drought that they'd have something in there. you know.
But I'm just trying to figure out why such a big hole. I mean, I guess, yeah, it's simple. If you had money, you know, go big, go home.
Well, once again, it was one of those things where during that time, they thought this was the Mac Daddy of water sources.
Right. That's
This
true.
is it. So, man, you have this huge well. The bigger the well, the more water you'll have. You'll know 20 years from now, we're always going to have water when no one else does. And then they find out 20 years later, they don't need it anymore.
So that's a big thing to keep in mind. This is before indoor plumbing was ever a thing, before it was ever invented, before it was ever an idea. This was the technology that was used in order for you living here to get to have a water source.
Yep.
So if you had the money, because droughts do happen, if you have the money and you can afford to dig a big damn hole, you're going to build a big damn hole. So that way, if a drought does come, you are not going to run out of any water. But this was the technology that they had. All of the water that gathered here came from the roof. So the gutters would all be piped into here, and this is where they got their drinking water, their bathing water, their washing water, their cooking water. All of the water source that you use in your home today for all your daily needs, they needed water back then for the exact same thing. To cook, to clean, to bathe, to drink, everything. They don't have plumbing, they've got big holes in the ground, and this is the technology that was used from 1900 going back.
Chances are, when we get down in that wall, there might be a hole in that wall, and that's where the
Where the
clean
water
goes to the edge of that house, and that drain would have filled it up that way.
Oh, that'd be
Unless
cool.
it was in the top, it could have been in the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're in the
In the
top.
side.
Yeah.
So
But you-
hopefully we'll get to see that.
But you only assume, because when I built my house 20 years ago, I built it figuring for 40 years of life. And 20 years later, it's already caught up with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though my house is good, technology, there's just so many things that I couldn't have added to my house, even with my vision, that I wish I had, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, same thing with like electricity inside the house.
Correct.
I mean, when they built this house, they weren't thinking electricity. Well, electricity was this crazy thing that you shock people to make
Correct.
your hair
Yeah,
grow.
yeah.
You know, it wasn't this great tool.
a
that-
conspiracy theory. Somebody's making lights in a house that you don't have to do nothing but flip a switch with, you know?
No, they're crazy. They're witches. They're witches. Burn them. Burn them.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. All right, I want to show you guys what we hit down here. If you look, see how we've got this black dirt, and look at our pile. We've got all this black dirt over here. Now we've hit clay. So what they would do is as they would fill this up, sometimes it would smell, sometimes it would stink. They would throw a layer of clay down as a way to kind of seal it off, to keep the stink down and the smell down. So this is an important sign for us in what we're getting to. So that means we still got a lot more to dig. Steve, what are you hitting down there? It seems awful hard.
I believe it's the all the bricks that came off the top of the dome of the cistern.
Okay, yeah, you can see bricks, because we haven't hit any bricks going down, and then all of a sudden we're hitting like a layer of bricks. So diagnostically, what does that mean?
Well, if they were loose bricks, like on these sides where you can take and just pull it off the side, then they're easy to dig around. But they had a dome that came on the cistern, allowing with the pump in the middle to where they could lean on over easy and do the pumping. When they were ready to fill it in, they just took sledgehammers and knocked
Busted it all to
the
crap,
whole dome.
pushed it all
The
in.
whole thing fell in, and now we've got to move it.
So, Mike, how common is this a diagnostic feature that you see when digging cisterns out?
We see it quite a bit, actually. I'd say, about 8 out of every 10 cisterns?
So basically, it was, you know, a little wall bricked in area with a pump on top.
Correct. It was a dome that came out of the ground,
Okay.
all made of bricks. Came up to about a 3-foot level, had a round disc in the middle with a hole about that big, and it had an old hand pump on top.
Okay.
Sometimes we even find the hand pumps in there.
Really?
They throw the hand pumps down there
No
too.
joke.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And sometimes they had this little system. Remember the system, the conveyor system, Steve?
Yeah.
They had these little buckets.
Little buckets on a chain.
And it's on a chain, and the thing is like 20 feet long times 2, so it'd be 40 feet long, and they would just pull this thing, and it would just bring all the water out that way. And we found the whole system in the cistern.
What's really cool is as we keep going, we can kind of see what exactly happened to this cistern through its life. So at some point with the layer that we're hitting now, somebody came in with sledgehammers and just knocked the crap out of the top and just threw it
in.
straight in and started throwing dirt and stuff on top of it.
That's
So
the
You can
norm.
zoom in. Here's the example. it's all still mortared together. All the caps, all the brick, everything, all the way around here. If I put my shovel on it and try to bend,
We'll have to break it apart piece by piece because it's
piece
giant pieces of the cistern pushed in.
off of the cistern, break it apart.
So Mike, Steve just handed us up this brick, and you guys were talking about the change in dirt, how you're starting to see good dirt, and you
Right.
can see it. See, what's going on in the dirt?
Well, they had a cap on top.
Okay.
It looks like it was about a 2-foot clay cap. And then underneath, you start getting into the ashy stuff.
Yeah, that looks like stuff you
And it's
pull out
gonna-
of your fireplace.
Right. So we're starting to get into the layers of where they dumped out the bottles, they dumped out ash, they cleaned out their stoves. Hopefully we'll get into the good trash layers. And as we go down, the layers may change again and again and again to different things.
Okay, so that's something to keep an eye out for if you're digging out a cistern is it's not just going to be straight dirt, because each layer tells a different story in the life of the hole and how that hole was filled up. So we went through all of the fill dirt that was put on top, then we got down to a cap clay layer, and now we're into an ashy layer where they were throwing their, household fireplace ash and organic stuff down into it, and hopefully below that is going to be our layer of good trash with bottles and stuff. But it also is cool as a diagnostic tool because it shows you that nobody's dug this hole yet.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of these, people have been digging out these cisterns for well over 50 years. And so to get one that's not dug out yet is a pretty awesome thing. So we know that what we're digging into is going to be pure.
Yep, we hope.
We hope. We hope they were very messy.
They're very trashy.
Very trashy.
In fact, we got our first artifact.
Oh, what we got?
We got an old spoon.
Oh, dude, that's cool. Look at that. A neat old spoon. Oh, what's really cool is you can see how it's caked up real bad right there. So that means it was in a fire. So they started a fire in here, and everything kind of melted down into that part of the spoon. So 20 teens, but first artifact to come out of the ground, hopefully the first of many. All right, so Mike, what do we got down here? It seems like our soil texture has completely changed.
That's exactly right. Matter of fact, you can even see a piece of glass that just fell out.
Oh, cool.
That's our first piece of glass. So what they did was they knocked the top in, unfortunately, because it's all big chunks of concrete and bricks and stuff.
Right.
Then they filled it in with red clay and dirt on top of that,
Okay.
about 4 feet thick. Underneath, this is where our layer starts. This is where everything that they dumped in the house is going to be in this layer and down.
From there down.
So
Okay.
we've already got a piece of glass there, and it looks like
piece of glass.
part of a milk bottle.
Okay, so we've got trash from there down, but that's a lot of dirt
Yep.
on top of this. But if you look at the sidewalls, you can see the clay going from the clay up to the fill dirt, and then everything.
Then
that was
all the
down
bricks in
underneath,
between.
and all the
Yep.
bricks in between. So we still got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're right where we need to be, which is right down where the stuff is at. There's glass intact, so that means that we've got a good chance of finding some really cool stuff. So nice.
We will.
Nice. All right, so what we're doing is we're kind of stopping and starting to open this hole up a little bit more because we hit the layer where we can find the great stuff. Down here, we've got, you can hear that crunch. Down here, we've got a layer of cinder and ash. All this stuff right here, that's all stuff out of the fireplace. That's all stuff out of the house. So that means that our bottles aren't going to be from where I'm standing up. That's just fill. Bottles are going to be from this layer and down. So we've hit the spot that we want to hit. So now we want to widen this up so that we can go down and safely excavate those bottles. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but you'll see when we get down to it, we'll find some awesome history. So we made it down into our cistern pretty deep. Let me show you what we're finding. It's really cool. You can tell that you're in the layer that you want to be by how it changes. So I want you to see there's a little handle off of a pot here, and see all of this stuff. This is all fireplace ash and spent coal and stuff like that. This, hear that sound? That's all that coal, and this is what we want to find. So this is the layer that's down, that's gonna have stuff in it. Everything that we've been digging up to this point has been the fill on top of this layer. So this is the trash layer that from 1890 to whenever they closed this hole up, that they, you know, threw in all of their trash and their waste and everything. We've already found a few things. Come over here. I'll show you what we found. Nothing terribly diagnostic yet, but we've got some neat things. We've got a spoon, but the spoon was much higher up. We've got this little top of a pickle jar. And then we've got household stuff like this bone rib right here. And then this is the center part of a pork chop. And these are good signs. This is good things to find, because this shows that they're throwing their household, their kitchen waste away. And hopefully with their kitchen waste, they're throwing, you know, plates and dishes and bottles and just things that they didn't want, they're chucking down into the hole. Here's a whole plate that we picked up that came out. And then this is a plate that's a little bit more diagnostic that has a name on it. So McKeon, and this is an 1890s era company, 1890s era plate. So this is where we want to be. So we're starting to get into the layer that we want to start to get into. So Mike's down in the hole digging it out. Steve's doing the bucket. Steve, is this a common, this consistency, this dirt, this is the dirt that you want to get into, right?
Exactly, yeah. We worked hard through that clay layer of fill, which was just a cap. So they capped it off because I think they were putting the driveway in. So they knocked the top off the cistern, put the clay cap on, just had fill dirt put in, and that was the end of that. So we're on the original end of the cistern's life.
Right. Now, should we be finding more stuff than we're finding right
yes,
now?
Yes. If generally on a normal middle-class family, let's call it, the bottles are usually full because they had plenty of, they didn't have any trash pickup, so they were ready to go ahead and get rid of it somewhere. An empty hole in the ground was the easiest place to put it. But with this house, this is one of the most affluent houses in the neighborhood. So they were wealthy then. At that time, they probably had somebody that took care of all their trash. And so whoever was helping them with the house or themselves would come down here and dump their midnight clinker, stuff like that, into here. But the trash was being taken away.
Yeah.
We found
Let's hope that's not the case.
We found that in the pit, and in the pit we had dug was an early pit, but it had been dipped, and rarely has anybody.
So what's dipping?
Dipping is when their outhouse filled up. Usually it would evaporate and go down, and then if it started smelling for any reason, they would put lime in the hole to kill the smell. The water would evaporate, or so-called water would evaporate, and then they would just keep using it. When it's dipped, when it got full and they were affluent, they just hired somebody to come and pull everything out and empty it and start all over again.
Another thing that may be the reason why, so we're digging on this side. Oh, hey.
That's part of the pipe that came from the house to fill the cistern.
So this is part of the pipe that would have come in, that would have taken the water inside the cistern to fill it up. Another thing, which could be why we're not finding a lot of stuff, is exactly where we're digging. If you look, we're digging on this side of the cistern. When you walk out the door right there, when you throw stuff, you're throwing stuff.
I threw out a bottle, Chase.
Oh, you got a bottle?
Yeah, we got a...
What do we got? Oh, cool.
Whiskey, sample whiskey, early.
Oh, wow.
Early sample whiskey.
That is way cool.
Got a little teeny amber. I think it's amber.
Wow, it is amber.
Does it have
no name? Amber. 1890s.
Is it, where's the mold seam?
Right there.
Yep, that's
So show us real quick how you date this bottle. So if you look on it, we've got a seam.
You got a mold seam that would be factory made, and on the new machine bottles, they come all the way up and go right over the top. Before they had machine-made bottles, they would blow them in the mold up to here and then apply the top. So the top is a separately applied item on the bottle.
And so because of that, we know that this is 1890s or back.
Or 1890s or turn of the century.
Turn of the century.
We're thinking 1890s.
Okay. So when it's 1895. So with little diagnostic techniques, you can identify what age a particular bottle is. But that is a super nice little bottle.
That's cool. Just threw it out.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break for a second from the dig because we want to tell you about this awesome Victorian house that we have. We're here with Sean Boland, who's one of the owners of this property. Dude, thank you so much for letting us tear up your backyard.
Well, thank you for finding all those treasures for us. They're going to stay with the house. We absolutely appreciate it.
And that's what's so cool, is to be able to find some cool stuff that you could add to the house, to the history of the house. But this house is a gorgeous house. Tell us a little bit about the family and the history of this place.
Okay, well, first let's talk about the architecture. Likely the most famous Victorian architect in the entire world was based out of Knoxville. His name was
Really?
George Barber, and we've got several George Barber homes in the neighborhood, and he's famous because he did mail order kits, and he would ship identical houses to one in Portland, Oregon that matches one just one street away.
Hold
So
on 1 second, wait. Mail order houses.
they would come in 19 train cars
What?
across the country,
That
only
is
for
so
about
cool.
$3,000.
Wow.
So, but he had all these catalogs, but the catalogs have been lost over time. And since this is such an ornate Eastlake Victorian, it has long been suspected, and even on the National Register of Historic Places, it's listed as a possible George Barber. It is not. This is actually has further regional ties to Knoxville, Tennessee, in that the Bowman brothers, a construction group who built Knoxville High School, who built Immaculate Conception downtown, who built the old post office, who built various buildings all through the city that are still standing today. They were, in fact, the original, the builders of this house. They designed it and they built it. It was built between 1889 and 1990.
1890.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So that's so neat. So this is, architecturally speaking, this is a very important home for Knoxville and East Tennessee and even the country.
Absolutely. And when we go inside, I'll show you some unique details that are celebrated all throughout the world. But we'll save that for later.
Okay, well, tell us about the family that had this house built.
Okay, well, before we talk about that family, and this was built in 1889, as I said, we should go back to 1892.
Okay.
On October 19th, 1892, there was a gunfight in downtown Knoxville between three people.
What?
Now, the day before that gunfight, there had been words were said at a exhibition in town. They separated. The words were said between Joseph Mabry, whose name people hear all the time
Yep.
here, and his son, Joseph Jr. Mabry, and then Thomas O'Connor. Now, Thomas O'Connor was very, very wealthy, rumored to be the wealthiest Tennessean at the time. They got into an argument over land. Like I said, they separated. Later that day, Thomas received a note from Mabry saying that next time Mabry saw Thomas, he would shoot him on sight.
What?
So the next day was Monday, and Thomas owned a bank on Gay Street. So he's standing in front of his bank, just watching the sidewalk, and there he sees Mabry Sr. walking down the street in his direction. Thomas goes inside the bank, pulls out a shotgun, levels it to Mabry, shoots him. First shot hits him on the side, and as he's falling, he gets shot again, and he's dead by the time he hits the ground.
What?
Now, Mabry Jr. was a lawyer, and he worked just 2 blocks away. He heard the gunshots, instantly started running towards the sound. And he's running down the street, and you can see his father laying down dead. He's got a pistol with him, and as he's running, he gets 40 feet away from Thomas O'Connor. He levels his pistol at him. He shoots Thomas right in the heart. And as Thomas is falling, he shoots his shotgun one more time, hits Junior, and he's dead.
What?
So in less than 2 minutes, 3 people were dead with only 4 shots fired.
This is like some Wild West stuff. It's,
It's
like, what the
fascinating.
heck?
Yeah, even Mark Twain wrote about it in Life on the
Really?
Mississippi. So, but Thomas O'Connor, being so wealthy, it took a long time for the estate to settle. So a few years later, his nephew, named after him, Thomas Peed, inherited a large sum of money. And with that sum of money, he hired the Bowman brothers, the best builders at the time in Knoxville, to build the house that we're going to see right now.
No joke. You had no idea we were going to talk about a gunfight, did you? That's awesome. And that happened right there. This isn't the Wild West. This isn't Montana. This is Knoxville, Tennessee. And you think you'd expect to see a gunfight in Knoxville, Tennessee, especially between a dude that owns a bank and the richest guy in Tennessee? That's freaking crazy. That's so cool.
Yes.
And this house came out of that event because he
Absolutely.
died. That's so cool. All right, so let's do this. Let's go in the house and let's
Okay.
check out some of these details you were talking about. You guys want to see? This is going to be awesome. We got a gunfight. How cool is that? So this is the inside of the house. Is this the original entrance to the home?
Yes, unfortunately in Knoxville, many of these older homes were broken up both in the 1940s when TVA came to town and we didn't have enough housing, and also during the 1982 World's Fair because we had an influx of laborers. So when this house was purchased by Alice and myself, it had actually been divided into a triplex. In fact, you could not come, they moved the door to here, you could not come in the entry door and walk to this side. It was crazy.
Oh, wow. So we've got an entrance here, but also noticed a door over there. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, actually. So we're on a corner of 5 points, but on 2 primary roads. We have Oklahoma Avenue, which used to be called Brookside. Brookside was a famous mill less than a mile away from here, but it was a dirty mill and it was noisy, and it wasn't necessarily prestigious to work at a mill, so eventually they changed the name to disassociate themselves with it. However, the street over here, which where the door does not face, the main door does not face, that's Glenwood. Glenwood used to be called Doctors Row because all the doctors that worked in nearby St. Mary's lived on this street. So even though this house faces Oklahoma, even though it faces a different direction of all houses on Glenwood, they lined all their sidewalks up at angles to hit Glenwood so they could have the address on Doctors Row.
No way. They thought that far ahead. It's like, well, we don't want that address. We want that address.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so cool. And see, those are details that, normally get lost with history. How did you figure that out?
Well, I've had help, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And honestly, it's like digging in a cistern.
Yeah.
You dig through history, you find wonderful details, and then you piece things together over time.
That's cool. Well, show us some other details of the house.
Yeah, let's. I do want to talk about this mantle up here.
Okay.
So this is an absolutely stunning mantle.
God, that's so cool.
Not only all the woodwork, but it's the tile work that is absolutely stunning.
When would this have been fired?
That would have been in 1889, and we know the designer. His name was Herman Muller.
So this is custom designed?
Not custom. They would create casts and they'd make multiple, but these were going to be the very highest end. And we know who made the tile, and it came from Zanesville, Ohio, by Muller. And we know where Muller went to school. We know where he studied in Germany. And we know this because he is so celebrated. He has his tile featured in a little museum, which I'll let you tell everyone what museum that is.
That is, the Met. You're
Yes.
kidding. Oh, that's awesome.
And not only does he have tile in the Met, the tile right here, it's nicer.
Are there any other examples of that tile still in its original location in other homes anywhere else that you can think
yes.
of?
You can buy actually some of the tiles. I'm personally not going to live here, but to have a memento, I actually found some of these tiles online and purchased them to hang up in my house.
Oh, that's cool. But just how amazing of a thing to still have originally intact in the house, this
Yes.
original tile work.
Intact and very little damage to it.
Now, the wood that I see here for the mantle and really throughout the rest of the house, I've always been curious about Knoxville homes because we're so close to what is now the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which before it was a national park, it was a major source of lumber for the Southeast. I mean, this was the largest expanse of virgin timber left east of the Rockies were right here. In the 1930s, they were still clear-cutting virgin forest. And I often wonder if some of the wood here might have came out of what would eventually be the national park.
It could be. We've gotten some of the wood that was used in this house came from Georgia. We do know that. Some probably came from this land. This was one of the first houses built in the neighborhood. This hill was covered with trees. So some of it probably came from here. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. The original floors in this house are heart pine. And heart pine is from the southern longleaf pine, where these trees, as they became old growth trees and got larger, the sap inside them would harden and turn amber. And so you would see in the pine floors at the tight grains at the center of the tree, waves of ambering. And it's called heart pine because of coloring.
So the floors are made out of virgin timber.
Yes.
Wow, that's
And heart
so
pine
cool.
is now considered extinct. The trees are still growing, but they never get to the size where the center ambers anymore.
Oh, wow, that's so cool. So is that something you'll do, polish up the floors so they can really be radiant?
Unfortunately, these floors were too damaged. This house, when we purchased it, had been vacant for 40 years. Termites had eaten through the floors. We had to replace 40 joists in the basement.
Oh, wow.
We even had termite colonies in the attic. So these floors are too damaged. However, all the trim that you're not seeing here, we have retained. We're going to bring back to life, put it back up. Once we are finished, everything in this house will look like it was here originally in that location.
So you do this for a living, right, or part-time, where
No.
you restore old houses like this?
It's a very expensive hobby. Is
Okay.
what it is.
It's a hobby.
So I
That's
have a
cool
day
hobby.
job, but I work from home and I live down the street, so I can check in anytime I want.
What made you decide that you wanted to spend your free time doing something like this?
Well, I think probably the same reason you like to do what you do. You see something that's fascinating. In my case, I walked into a condemned house 5 blocks away from here, had holes in the roof as big as beach balls. It would rain onto the first story of the house, and I walked through with flashlights, walked around, and I said, I have to have it. I couldn't afford to pay people to do all the work, so I had to learn and teach myself how to do it. And you learn and you talk to people, and it becomes wonderful. There's actually a forensic architecture where you can go through and you can see the history of a house just by looking at the floors or looking at the trim or looking at the windows. You can tell a whole lot by what you see in a house. For example, this room had wainscoting all the way around, and over here we had wainscoting, and this door was removed to do some work right here that matched seamlessly with the rest. However, it was a secret door.
Whoa.
And this would be a prohibition closet for.
So this was so this had a secret door right here, and this was a prohibition closet? That's so
Yes.
cool. Wow, can you imagine? Just stop and think for a second. Just imagine right here, it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. It's, 1925 and somebody wants a drink. And you look around and be like, man, it's prohibition. Wait a minute. Right here. I got you covered. Don't worry about it. What do you want? Pick out. We got wine, we got schnapps, we got all the good stuff. Whatever you want, we got you covered. That is just so cool. And what a neat discovery to have.
Yes, it is. And any home you work in, there's going to be wonderful discoveries to be had.
And see, this is something I wanted to bring up because you guys that are watching right now, this is my hometown. It's Knoxville, Tennessee. This is where Chasing History is based, and this is where we're located. This is my hometown. You guys have hometowns as well. And in every single one of your hometowns, maybe even right next door to where you are right now, there's a home just like this that needs saving and rescuing. This is literally our history. America's history, as a nation isn't very old. It's only a couple hundred years old. Same with our architecture. It's just a couple hundred years old. So it's vitally important for people like you to step up either as a hobby or go into it as a profession to preserve and protect these historic houses. And dude, I think what you're doing here is just awesome. And this same thing needs to be done to your houses in your neighborhood as well. So I definitely commend you on that, man. This is a cool hobby to have.
Yes, it
I
is.
love it. So what are some other cool details that you would like to show us?
Well, the windows. Now you'll notice that all the windows are out, and that's because we were spending a small fortune to have them repaired. Since this house was neglected for so long, it hasn't had the opportunity to be remodeled like other houses or new windows replacing the old windows. So what we're doing with these windows, since they're so special, since there's none like them in the neighborhood, is we're having them all restored individually to be returned to their original location.
Oh, that's awesome.
But we do have some of these windows currently upstairs that we haven't removed yet, and I'd like to show them to you.
Oh, after you, sir.
Now, this stained glass window is a wonderful example of what I'm talking about with the windows in this house never have been being replaced. And especially now, as the light's shining through, you can see the elegance. Just a few months ago, for a historic home tours of the neighborhood, we actually held this home open. We had lights strung all throughout here, and it was an evening tour. And since the house had been vacant so often, it was the first time people on the outside could see the beauty of this window.
Oh, that's
and the
so
other
cool.
ones in 2 generations. But let's go to look at some of these rooms where we have the windows still intact that we'll repair.
Now, was this common in the Victorian era to do stuff like that?
It was common to do some of that, only in the most elegant of homes. In this neighborhood, we've simply lost them due to time.
So is this one of the only ones that still remains in this area?
Yes, undeniably.
Wow.
So for every room in the house, they have different colors and different textures for the upper parts. So in here it's blue. In the room over here, it's red.
Oh, that's a cool detail. Huh. Do we know what the different colors mean? Was there meanings behind the different colors?
Not that I know of. But we also have the original hardware on the windows. So the old stamped Eastlake window hardware, that's also being restored.
And some of the original glass, it looks like.
Yes, and we're retaining the wavy glass where we can.
Nice.
Unfortunately, when you repair windows, you have to use heat and pressure, and that glass is delicate.
Yeah.
But we do want to save every piece we can, because that's a wonderful part of history.
Oh yeah, you know, a thing to keep in mind when dealing with old homes like this. So it's hard to fathom, but glass is actually still a liquid. So on some old homes, when you'll take out some of these old windows, it'll be really thin up top and thicker at the bottom. That's because even though we can't see it, that glass is slowly moving, and given enough time, it'll totally pull up at the bottom. We're talking like 1,000 years, but it's just a really cool feature. So if you are in a home or around a home that has original glass windows like this, be really careful with them, especially up top, because the glass is going to be thinner up here and thicker down there because it's still a liquid. Is that not cool?
So now, unfortunately, sometimes things happen when you're restoring an older home. So for example, this window over here was in perfect shape when we bought the house. As we were removing the ceiling to repair termite damage, a piece bounced up, broke the glass. We have all those pieces saved. So the Japanese have this art form where they take a piece of broken pottery and they put it together with gold to highlight the imperfections that are currently there and to symbolize that imperfections are beauty. So with those pieces of broken glass, we're going to add lead between them so you can see the history that occurred. And not only that, that is not going to talk about the symbolize imperfections and beauty imperfections. That's going to symbolize the rebirth of this house.
That is such a cool idea, man. I love that idea. That's awesome. Well, and it's part of you guys' story as well, you know, because, you know, now you're permanently attached to the history of this house.
Yes.
Which is so cool when you think about it.
It's absolutely wonderful.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you want to show us? Or?
Yes, well, let's turn around and look in here. So most of the details have been taken down so we could do repairs. But if you take a close look at this doorknob, and let's get a light on here, you can actually tell these are all hand-carved wooden doorknobs.
No way!
And each of those individual
What?
grains down there was carved by hand.
Are those burls? No. Man, that is awesome. Wow. I have never seen, let's look at this one on this side. I have never seen wooden doorknobs like this before. That is so cool.
And I'm a fan of Eastlake hardware, and you can see the escutcheon and the rosette, how that's wonderfully stamped.
Yeah.
I've never seen wooden doorknobs that ornate.
Wow, I know. Look at the lines going on the back of it. That is so cool.
Now, let me show you some of the window hardware, because we have a great example right over here in our primary bath, or what will be our primary bath. And here we have some wavy glass that had been broken, but here's the Eastlake Hardware.
Now, Eastlake Hardware, explain what that is, that company.
Eastlake is a style of hardware, not necessarily a company.
Where is it from?
It's from all over the U.S.
Okay.
Since it's simply a style.
So this house is filled with this style of hardware.
Correct. So you can't tell from the lift because that one has been painted.
Yeah.
But there's beautiful details in those, and as we repair the windows, we're stripping the paint off of those.
Are you going to take these off and clean them up and
As well as we can, but at the same time, you want to leave some patina.
Yeah.
For so it just shows its age.
You know what I love is the attention to detail that you're paying to this house. I mean, you are really like making sure everything gets done and done correctly. And just to see that, you know, to see somebody put, you know, their love and passion for the place, you know, in front of profit or whatever, you know, that's really cool.
Someone has to save it.
Yeah, and that's a cool mindset. And it's like we were saying earlier, guys, right where you're at right now is a home in need of the exact same thing. So if anybody out there is looking for a cool hobby, you can make this a hobby. He does. Why can't you? This is awesome, man. What other neat details? Is that the original bathtub?
That's the original bathtub. We are going to refurbish that and use it. We've already plumbed for it.
Wow.
And then maybe you can give me a moment or two to dig through the piles and I can pull out some other details.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So here are some other additional details. So the rosettes or the bullseyes, those would be on the corner blocks of windows. And this was also featured in the front hallway.
God, that's gorgeous. Now, in places where, are any of these missing in the home?
We pretty much will have everything.
Oh,
now
that's
downstairs we couldn't tell because we took them off to store them for safety, but all the doors downstairs are 8 foot tall. They're just massive
That's
doors.
Wild.
And if we take another walk back here into the hallway, we're going to see a unique plaster art form. So plaster was built using 3 steps. You would put rough cut lathe, nail that to the wall. You take a brown coat where you would push plaster on the wall and push it through so that the plaster would drip down right here, and that holds the plaster to the walls. So these are called plaster keys. Then they put a thicker coat. The thicker coat generally has horsehair in it for nicer homes, sometimes just straw and rocks. Then they put an eggshell coat on the outside. But here in this house, we have rounded corners.
Oh, wow, that's unusual.
It's extremely unusual. And then they've also sweated the trim to match the molding.
Now, when you say sweat the trim, what does that mean?
So what you do, in order to get trim to bend, you do several things. You cut many vertical cuts on the inside of the wood, so when you fold it, it doesn't, so it can fold. But then 2, it's not going to move until you sweat it. So you steam the wood.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it's flexible, you attach it, and then you have this.
That is cool. When you guys were gutting everything and getting everything prepared to be fixed again, did you guys find anything interesting in the home?
Well, our contractor found a wall full of coins. So we have, a stack of buffalo nickels, of
cool.
mercury dimes, and wheat pennies. So we have found some things, but not as much as we would have liked. For example, the last house I worked on was owned by a painter. His name was Ron Williams. He's nationally known, but he had some challenges. So when I purchased his home, the house was filled with books and trash, and it was just very filled, we should say. But I went through everything painfully, and on one of the last days of cleaning, I bent down, I picked up a book, thumbed through it, and it was a book where he had sketches. So I found a stunning Ron Williams sketch of the Smoky Mountains, which we can see from here, that had probably only been seen by him.
Wow.
And so I was the second person to view them. So these houses do have not only great history, but they have wonderful gifts that they can give you too.
For sure. Are you guys going to add anything to like a time capsule or anything for your own history? Or?
Interesting that you asked that, because yes, we are going to add one.
That's so cool.
So we, as I mentioned earlier, we had a home tour through this house over the winter. We had 1,200 people that came through.
Wow.
And one of the things we requested of them was to leave letters or notes to a future owner of this house. So we have these large sheets of paper, probably 5 feet wide, that we've rolled up that have over 1,000 messages. Some of them talking about how bad the weather was on the home tour. Some of them talking about people that they've missed that they've restored houses with. It was truly a wonderful experience.
That is like seriously the coolest idea I have ever heard, man. That is so freaking cool. What a great idea.
Yes. It's a wonderful gift to leave for others. So not only are we finding gifts that will stay with the home, and as you have earlier today, you gave us gifts of bottles, we're also contributing to that as we restore this house.
That's awesome. Now I've got a question. So the life of the house, when this house was a living house originally, when it was built, what was life like here at the house? What were the owners like? What happened between all these walls? Anything interesting?
Well, lots of interesting things. So let me tell you a story of Rose Clark. I've had people help me find the history, or uncover the history of this home, and this wonderful lady sent me 4 clippings out of newspapers via email. And so I read them one by one, and the first was a socialite, 2 paragraphs about Rose Clark celebrating her birthday and how beautiful the birthday was when she was 11 years old. It even mentioned the people that attended.
Oh, wow.
The second article was about a terrible traffic accident 15 miles away from here that she was in. The third article that was written was that Rose Clark left the hospital today, where she had been in the hospital in a traffic accident in which her brother died. And then the fourth article was her obituary, where it again talked about the accident and how she had then been crippled her entire life.
And she lived in the house?
She lived in the house. And the door that we didn't have the original door, so we found a replacement door for the house that matches all the arches outside. It matches some of the stained glass windows in its ironwork. And at the center of those doors, in the ironwork, is a single rose in each door.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. What a neat little touch to add to it.
It's a small touch, but a wonderful one.
Yeah. What other kind of people lived in the house, or things that took place here?
Well, that's so later on this year, before the house is done, we're going to host a charity event for the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And what many people don't know is that the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra, or the KSO, is the longest running continual orchestra in the Southeast.
Wow.
It began its run in 1935, but actually had its first showing in 1930, right after the Prohibition, or right after the stock market crash. And the person that founded the KSO, both in 1930 and 1935, and up until the 40s, was a woman named Bertha Clark. And Bertha Clark lived in this house. And if you think about it, she became not only the founder and the conductor when women weren't allowed to have many positions, but that was only 12 years after she got the right to vote.
Wow.
And so she was a fiery figure that lived in this house. She had a husband that was 10 years younger than her. She had been a divorcee, and she has changed the landscape of our musical scene in Knoxville, Tennessee, which holds music venues all year.
And even more of a reason to preserve and to protect this house, because that's a huge part of our history. That's really cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the story to the house?
No. I think I've given you quite enough. Yes.
Man, Sean, thank you so much for taking us around and doing a tour in the house. If people want to learn more about the house's history, do you have any online resources?
Absolutely. We have both a Facebook page and Instagram page where I post histories and update the progress of this restoration. Simply type in 523E for East Oklahoma, and it'll pop up and you can follow along with us.
We'll have that. We'll have a link to that down in the description down below. So make sure you check that out. Well, dude, let's go. Let's check on the guys and let's close this episode up. You guys want to hang out for just a few more minutes? All right, so we ran into an unexpected problem, and this is where experience, especially on jobs like this, is so important. Guys, what do we got going? I mean, we got down pretty far. We're what, 15 feet down?
We're probably about maybe 10 feet down, I'd say.
And still
we just hit the water line, which makes it a little tougher. But we also got this issue up here, this cracking right here, right along the driveway. And what's going to happen is this is all going to cave in. So in order for us to dig it safely, we'd have to bust all this driveway out, take all this dirt out, and get back to that level. And for what we're finding, we say it's not worth it.
And see, this is where experiences is so important. These guys have been digging these cisterns for how long? 30 years at least?
40.
40, 50,
plus.
100. And let me show you, we've dug this whole hole and we've only found a handful of things. This is the best bottle, one of the best bottles that we've pulled out of there. What kind of bottle do we have?
It's some kind of medical bottle. We're not sure. It's not embossed. It has no markings on it or anything, but you can tell by the top, the seam line ends down here and it's got like a blob top on it. It's probably 1880s, 1890s, but probably held some kind of medicine or something.
Yeah, a little broken tea kettle. Just a few odds and ends, nothing really that great. What should we be finding if we're down this deep?
All the daily household bottles and jars, everything that products come in. Everything. I mean, it all came from the stores, and so once they've used it, they didn't recan it with it. It just was all trash.
But for a hole this deep, we should have more than one bottle.
We should already have like
Hundreds.
hundreds of bottles
Hundreds
already.
of bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's telling you a lot by what we're not finding. Why do you think that this cistern doesn't have a ton of bottles in it?
I would say...
My guess is this. He was an architect that lived here. Maybe he was a single guy and didn't have a lot of family. So usually the more family, the more stuff you find. Like if they're kids, you'll find doll parts, you'll find marbles, you'll find toys, you'll find different things.
And we're not finding any
And
of
we're not
that.
finding any of that.
And I would also say, for this neighborhood, this is one of the richest neighborhoods in Knoxville at the time, and this house here was the model home for the area as far as grandeur and architecture, everything goes. So they were very affluent, and they didn't do like normal families of taking their trash and getting rid of it any way possible. They probably had somebody.
They had a
that
wagon.
actually
Yep.
hired them to come by to pick up all their trash, dump their cinders, do all the work for them. You know, so
They didn't have to throw it in the hole.
They weren't
Right.
a normal working household. They were affluent,
Right.
entitled households.
They were rich enough where they probably had a trash pickup, where they probably had all of that stuff, somebody doing all of those things
Or
for
daily,
them.
whoever was working, because I'm sure they had housekeepers here.
Yeah.
Whoever was working at the time removed it daily out of
Yeah.
the house and either took it somewhere, had someone take it somewhere, because this is so unusual. We've dug hundreds of these, and there's very few that weren't productive in some way. We always get something out of them that makes it worthwhile for us to get into and take the time. This one we were only able to do half of it because we had a 6 foot, at least 6 or 7 foot clay cap. So we decided once we got through the cap, and also the driveway impeded us, but once we got through the cap, we kept going down on one side hoping to find that trash layer that was productive, that was made us reasonably want to take this rest of the top off.
Yeah, so if we were pulling out hundreds of bottles like we should be,
We'd be moving all this.
Then
moving all this,
we would
pulling
bust all this
up.
out. We would dig it down correctly. The whole thing would be exposed, and we'd go down. But we're not getting the stuff that we should be getting.
And if we were, we would be showing you a lot of really cool stuff. But don't fear. So, and this is the reality of it. That's what we do. We show you. Sometimes you find awesome stuff. Sometimes you don't. This isn't the Travel Channel. We don't plant. This is Chasing History. You're going to see what we found. And right now, that's the best thing we found so far.
That and a little whiskey.
That and a little whiskey bottle.
And the thrill is the hunt. So we're treasure hunting. We're just not treasure finding.
That's right. So guys, I don't know if you can see it or not, but look right here. See how this crack, since we've been talking, this crack just keeps opening up and opening up. This is one of the reasons why we're stopping, is because this is about to fall in, and for you to be 15 feet down and have 500 pounds of wall fall on you,
right.
that's going to hurt. And that's going to do some major damage. So safety is our number 1 priority here, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. So, yeah, I mean, it's just moving and moving. It's not going to be any time for that whole wall just comes crashing down. So we got to be careful.
Ways. Yep. So if you were down there right now, it'd be, oh!
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to hit, and that's a lot to hurt. And so
And this is the edge of the driveway, so.
yeah, and that's a driveway too. So we would have to bust through that with sledgehammers to get that size out, and we're just not finding the bottles that we should to warrant the amount of energy and effort that it would take to dig all of the rest of that out. That's the call here. Is we've got a safety call, and we've got a we're not finding stuff call, and because of that, we're going to call it. But don't worry, I'm going to show you guys a bunch of cool bottles here in a second. So here's what we got, and this is the reason why we're not continuing with the hole, is because for all the dirt that we've moved, we should have a lot more than this, but this is the grand total of everything we found, but it's still pretty diagnostic. So you can see we've got little pots, little broken flower pots. That's part of a dish, of a kitchen bowl dish, a little cup, cute little bracelet here with some beautiful little engravings on it. That's really cool. Here's our whiskey bottle that we found. So a neat little 1870s whiskey sampler bottle. That's probably the neatest bottle that we've got. A button. But the thing is that there should be 100 times this much. For the amount that we've dug, we should be having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles, but we just don't have it. So these guys have dug for over 30 years, and they've dug sites like this where you've got a home where a very rich person lives there. They have trash pickup, so they're not throwing stuff down in the hole. Otherwise, we'd be finding a lot more stuff than this. But this is the grand total for everything we found. But it's still neat stuff. Look, there's a ham bone off of somebody's dinner, which is pretty cool when you think about it. There's another bone off of somebody's dinner. I mean, that to me is just freaking epic, dude. That's somebody's dinner. I mean, how freaking cool is that? So that's all we've got. A little piece of china. So, but it should be a lot more than what we're finding now. So anyway, we're gonna call it.
It's in the back of the wall.
So this is the crappy part. This sucks. Filling everything back in with only 2 bottles. This is a lot of dirt, and we got a lot of hole to go. So if you want to go do this, you can. Not all the times it pans out, but sometimes it does, and this is one where it didn't. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, woo, history sucks. This is where history sucks.
3, 2.
This has been an awesome episode, and man, Sean, thank you so much for having us out and to let all of us dig a giant hole in your backyard and for showing us the house.
And thank you for filling it back up.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, of course. Guys, what's your final read on the hole? So we looked at it, it wasn't producing. Why wasn't it producing?
I think that it would produce down deeper down, but we had to contend with the water, contend with a big solid wall of red clay, the half we didn't dig. So I think that there would have been stuff down there, but it wouldn't have been productive enough for all of us to come out of it, besides the joy of digging. You know what I mean? We did get a few things which we're happy with for the homeowners, but everything else, it is just too much work for what it was. But I do think it would have been, we were already at the period of the house. Late 1880s, early 1890s. So as we got down, there would have been a lot of neat things maybe come out, but then maybe not either. So, you know, it just wasn't worth it. And then when it got to a point to where it was endangering us and we had to make the decision, that's when we just pulled the plug. It wasn't that we didn't want to keep going. It just wasn't worth another day of digging.
The 12 feet that we dug, we just didn't, you saw what we had, just a handful of stuff.
Yep.
Normally we'd have 4 or 5 buckets full of stuff.
We're jaded. We want more.
But see, guys, that's just it. I mean, look, this is the Travel Channel. We're not going to plant stuff for you. So, oh, look what we found. We're going to show you actually what we find. And sometimes it's not much. And sometimes when digging cisterns, you've got to make those calls. But now you know how the process is done. And maybe, I guarantee you, wherever you are right now, there is a cistern near your house. I mean, unless you're in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, then maybe not. But if you're in an urban area like we are, guarantee you there's cisterns out there for you to explore, for you to go find, and you to save the history out of there. And there's also historic homes like this completely around where you're at now that need preserving and protecting and saving, just like this home here. So if you get a chance and if you want to do something like this, this is something that you can do. You can go chase history. You can find cool stuff. And if you need to learn how to do it, man, YouTube University, come on.
Call us.
Or call these
Call
guys.
us.
So Sean, thank you very much. Mike, thank you.
My pleasure.
Steve, thank you. Daniel, thank you. Isaac, my boy back there, holding up the back.
Thank you.
Thank you for the muscles. All right, guys, remember, history rocks. Woohoo!